Hey everyone. I still don't have my voice back properly, but okay, this will have to do. In the last episode, I briefly talked about the use of termite clay in architecture, and I just wanted to show these pictures that I found of rudimentary ways of stacking and heating up fresh mud bricks. Links below as usual, but I reckon that those people who are interested in Adobe architecture will do their own additional research. I have little to offer in that sense. I kinda noticed that the addition of termite clay to mortar happens more often than it is mentioned in papers, as if it is too trivial to pay attention to. I talked about the appearance of termites and their mounds in creation mythology of some cultures as an illustration. I thought I had one from the Fang culture here. The Fang are a warrior people, rather small in stature, who migrated southwards and settled in the equatorial area of North Gabon and Cameroon. Their myths speak of a spider that descends from the sky, and after her egg sac breaks, termites are released into the primordial water where they create the earth. Despite the variations in the individual pygmy culture's lore, the idea of humanity being made of termite clay is a theme that seems to return, and among those people we find a snake in connection with creation and rainbows. I said I would return to the Dogon, but other than mention their Binu shrines and their Togunas or old men's huts, which are constructed in a similar way as the Musgum houses, that is, according to a specific ceremonial construction doctrine that includes the ritual use of termite mound soil, I have little to report for now. Instead, I would like to address a people who live southwest of the Dogon, the Bamara or Bamana. Both groups belong to Mande ethnicity, and according to some historians, the Dogon fled to the Bandiagara region because of the threat of the Bamana Coulibaly Empire, which was into slave trade with Arabs and Portuguese via surrounding cultures. The Bamana are a people who use a strict divided society, a caste system of sorts, dividing landowners, artisans, and workers or slaves. Also here, special powers is attributed to termite mounds. They are considered the doorways to the underworld, used by spirits and ancestors to enter into the visible world in some form or another. Again, a returning theme among different cultures, even beyond Africa, like we have seen earlier in the first episodes. A stillborn child is considered a creation of spirit. The little body will thus be laid on an anthill for them to come and take their creation back with them, back to the underworld. Termites bring things positive where ants are the necessary evil counterpart and bring destruction. Sacred ceremonial masks are carved out of the wood of a tree that grows on a termite hill. If the artist no longer needs the mask, he will likewise abandon it on the anthill in order to return it to the netherworld, where it came from. The artisans are members of secret societies, and initiation into these groups lasts several years. Different masks are linked to specific societies. Bamana, who are mostly a farming people, also have special masks for ceremonies in which they honor Chi Wara. Ritual dances would be performed to honor and call for his blessing about 3 times a year. In this ritual, both men and women would take part in. The practice died out in the first half of the 20th century. Now the larger part of the Bamana are Muslims. The ritual dances are now a folkloristic performance. The animist connection is as good as gone. In fact, Bamana means the ones who reject, refuse, because it took so long before they converted to Islam. Chi Wara is a hero of Bamana legend, composed of three spirit animals. At the bottom of the headdress we find the aardvark. On top of him, the pangolin. Even in strongly stylized masks like this one here, one can still recognize the scale skin, and on top we see the horns of an antelope. Probably this antelope is an oryx or a rowan antelope. They represent together Chi Wara, the spirit who taught the people the agricultural life back in primordial times. Pangolin, just like aardvark, is a nocturnal animal, connected to the air as it climbs trees, connected to water through its scaled skin, and to earth because of its strong claws to break through the strongholds of termites and ants. That's why a pangolin enjoys a special status among some people, and their rulers would wear a ceremonial hat or a headdress with pangolin scales. Like the aardvark, it lives in burrows and in old termite mounds. Aardvark may not have this intrinsic connection to the elements, nevertheless, it is an exceptional creature. Impossible to classify it into any group of animals. It is extraordinary because of its looks and because of its behavior. In West African cultures, both are considered related. Parts of the aardvark's body are used as charm. It is believed to induce stamina for men and protection for women. In Hausa witchcraft, the claws of the aardvark are worn as a magic talisman, which allows to walk through walls. It is also used in potions for ailments. Aardvark's ability to plow the earth and its position with its curved back reminds the position of humans working the earth. Since earth is considered a feminine element, the ease by which this animal penetrates it does of course remind us of masculine virility. Its pose is similar to a man's position during coitus, but for the Bamana the curve of its back also symbolizes the curvature of the sky, the movement of the sun being translated as the movement of the hoe as the farmer swings it while working. The supreme male being, sun, penetrates feminine earth and makes things grow, similar as the farmer does. At some point I found myself very much in doubt. There seemed to appear a severe contradiction in what I had read about earlier. All three animals assembled in the Chi Wara masks have the means to dig into hard soil. Both the pangolin and the aardvark feed on termites and ants, mainly, and they have big claws that allow them to destroy the insect's habitat. Why would a people glorify an animal that feeds on termites and destroys the hills when there were clearly signs of the widespread worship of termite mounds as a powerful entity? Questions like these kept on bugging me a bit. The worship of a feminine earth is combined with acts of destruction and submission. For those who watched the previous episode, we saw a possible connection between this destruction and circumcision. And then here comes Aardvark, destroyer of anthills, as the first farmer who subdues the goddess, and then he poops cucumbers. Seriously, it eats a special kind of cucumber of which it poops out the seeds again on its own, representing a full agricultural circle by digging, sowing, fertilizing, raking, and harvesting. This cucumber, Cucumis humifructus, grows its fruits several feet underground, and it's the only of its kind doing this. It is a valuable food and water source for the animal. In fact, the cucumber is dependent on the aardvark solely for the seeds to be able to sprout. Um, there are several other animals that are using the aardvark burrows to temporarily house their eggs or young, like foxes, the aardwolf, and some wild felines, porcupines, but they do not play any role in the distribution of this particular cucumber. A weird kind of symbiotic relationship, since this cucumber is the only plant that this anteater ever puts its teeth in. Aardvark as a perfect farmer, worthy to be a totem animal of an agricultural hero. Male species grow their testicles inside, so the gender of the animal is hard to recognize. Does this also indicate the non-dualistic character of an ancient and of the ancient animistic belief? I think I would need a few more months of reading before even attempting to answer that one, though. It occasionally crossed my mind if all this could have anything to do with one of Egypt's most ancient gods, Lord of the Desert and the land beyond. You may think it is ridiculous, but it is not the first time this possibility crossed my mind, and I am certainly not the first one either. I will attempt to show it is even very likely by using material from Pierre Demare. He is a Belgian scholar connected to the University of Uccle, and by adding my own findings. It brought up more questions, like where did this concept emerge, or how did it spread to West Africa, if Egypt was the actual source to begin with. I needed to go way back in time first, back into the Neolithic subpluvial of 10,000 years ago, before the north of Africa became the Sahara Desert. So I ended up roaming the Sahara for a while, reading about ancient places, looking at archaeological sites at once important clusters of waterways that since long disappeared, and at all trade routes. Turns out that there have actually been studies since 1975 already, concluding the presence of ancient waterways in the desert during Paleolithic times, and discussing the changing environment from harsh savanna land into tropical humid and eventually back into desert as we know it today, and and the implications for first humans to who peopled Europe. Meanwhile, modern techniques have allowed to map these ancient water sources, and archaeology has delivered many proofs of ancient human occupation in what is now too arid for most life to exist. It is so hard to imagine a green Sahara. It also makes one realize what the implications are when something is hidden beneath the sand. I read of this study by this lady, and I'm very sorry I can't recall her name, and I seem to have lost the link. But this she tells how she buries a book in the desert, under the sand in the desert in Africa somewhere, and when she went to see what was left of it 1 year later, she found it was partially eaten by termites, although no mounds were in the vicinity. Termites love cellulose, and they go a long way to get the stuff. They are like little cockroaches. They make part of the waste processing department of our natural world. I addressed all this in the early episodes. This, for example, can have serious implications for archaeology, and many have already been confronted with a trove that was severely destroyed by these insects. Last time I said that the Nile Valley may be the likely way along which people and their cultural values have moved northwards. But I realize now that I didn't look far enough yet, and I was probably at least partially wrong. Partially in the sense that the waves of migration back and forth from Africa into Europe or Asia and back during tens of thousands of years might just as well have happened via Libya, for example, back then already, since the water levels of the Mediterranean were considerably lower than today. I will add a few articles on the Green Sahara era for those people who are interested. According to some researchers, the Sahara has been arid savanna or even desert area for 70,000 years, an extended period that ended with the Neolithic pluvial from 12,000 to around 4,000 BC. And that is supposedly the only exception there was. During the Green Sahara period, rivers and lakes that would connect sometimes during monsoon seasons allowed the movement of different aquatic animals. Desertification trapped parts of tropical rainforest, offering a refuge to a number of animals. And that is why to this day there is a rare species of crocodile in Morocco, for example, Crocodilus succus, that has a closer genetical connection to the Egyptian mummified crocodiles of antiquity than the large Nile crocs of today have. But all that on a side note, because although not impossible, the giant deltas, the tropical swamplands that cover the large region, may have been a harder barrier to cross than initially may seem. At the end of the last episode, I showed an article on the Okavango Delta in Botswana and the vital role of the termite mounds there for so many living critters in the area during rain season and the accompanying flood. The elevated mounds offer dry ground to a number of animals, and I imagine large parts of what is now arid Sahara Desert would have looked like that. But what I need are facts. So the oldest fossilized termite nests in Africa can be dated back millions of years, and they were found in Chad. The oldest fossils of aardvark are discovered in Sudan, north of Khartoum, where the white and the blue Nile merged together and these are from the 3rd millennium. Nowadays, aardvarks can only be found in equatorial and southern Africa, but the fossils prove they were present up north, and it opens a possibility for a link to ancient Egypt. And then I found something that encouraged me, since it somehow connects the aardvark, the primordial mound, and Egypt. I came upon a place called the Land of Papyrus. So if you want to know what that is about, stay tuned. It shouldn't take too long. Thanks very much for watching, and see you next time.